Thank you very much, Darcy. And I'm honoured to be here today. It's an interesting experience to be asked to speak about your career in statistics and where it's led you. So this is not going to be a statistics talk at all. So let's see if I can get this to work. I was born in Ipswich, which is just west of Brisbane. I went to the local high school and I enjoyed maths. If you don't want to be a lawyer and you don't want to be a doctor, the advice you get is be a high school teacher. And I must admit that's what I went to university to do, but I needed a scholarship. I needed a scholarship because unfortunately my father had been ill and he died when I was 13, so my mother was a pensioner and she took a job cleaning before and after school hours. She walked to school 3 kilometres, she cleaned from 6 to 8, she came home, she walked up again in the afternoon, cleaned from 3 to 5, and I had decided that I was going to work hard and get a job that was going to be able to support me if unexpected things happen. So I think many of us are influenced by what happens to us as children and how we go forward. I enrolled at the University of Queensland. Again, an interesting process. I happened to drive down with a friend who had gone to Ipswich Grammar School, and he was telling me how he was going to enrol for honours maths. And I said, oh, what's honours maths? You need 7s. That was the grade to enrol for this. And I thought, I got 7s. Why do I enrol for that? Why don't I enrol for that? Absolutely arbitrary. Just happened to go down in the car when you had to enrol. This is the days when you actually had to come to campus to enrol. So I can go backward and forward on these slides. So I came down, you had to come down to actually enrol, and you had a cap and gown to be on your first day at university. That's the photo in the middle with me and my mother. And I graduated with first class honours. And I didn't quite know what to do. I had a PhD scholarship, but I didn't have an area or a supervisor that, really enthralled me. And I was getting married a couple of months after I graduated. So what happened was Ivor Horton, who was the lecturer in biometry in the Department of Agriculture at UQ, contacted one of the statisticians in the maths department and said, would you announce in your class, please, that we've got a job going? I heard it in the class, didn't even see an ad. I went over, was interviewed, and I got the job. Interestingly enough, my girlfriend, who was doing honours maths and stats at the same time, got the same job at Sydney University. She wanted to move to Sydney. I was very happy to stay in local. But it's interesting how things happen that are not planned. It just works out that way. Taking advantage of opportunities. You have to see what's around. Maybe it'll work. So I got the job. This was in January 1974. I started work. 2 weeks later, we had the Australia Day floods. I then spent 2 weeks cleaning mud out of the glass houses at the university. And I then had 2 weeks for a honeymoon. It was an interesting start to my career at UQ. But it was a great environment. The people were really friendly. They wanted people to help. They had real problems and they were very welcoming. I couldn't have asked for a better environment in which to work. And they were so keen with their research students. They really wanted people to get involved, particularly in international agriculture, agriculture in general. It was quite exciting. So I came back to talk to the head of School of mathematics, who happened to be a statistician at the time. He said, oh, I thought maybe I'd like to do a PhD part-time. I think I've now got a project, and Jeff McLaughlin was actually just starting work in the maths department then. I think I've got a project I'd like to work on. And he said to me, you're a woman, you've just started work, you're talking about having children soon. Do you think you can handle part-time study? Why don't you do a coursework master's? I thought that was probably a decent idea, because he said, you'll see if you can handle part-time study. It's quite different from when you're a full-time student. So I said, okay. And I did that. And then I enrolled for my PhD part-time after I got my Master of Literary Studies. It was a Master of Literary Studies in Statistics, which I think was an interesting name. I've often asked, oh, what did you study? What was your literary studies? Stats. You get a strange look. Anyway, I graduated with my PhD, and my supervisors were Jeff McLaughlin and Don Blythe. They were outstanding supervisors, and I continued working with Jeff for a very long time, and I continued working with Don. I actually worked on soybean data, and the plant breeders Ray Shorter and Vince Montgomery were the people who had generated that data and were there saying, how best can we analyse it? So it was really exciting. It was interesting at the time, the Dean of Science, Bert Frost, actually said to me, I'd known him from the maths department. He wasn't a mathematician, but he said, you'll never be considered a real statistician, Kaye, if you don't work in a department of mathematics. I said, Bert, I think I will be considered a real statistician, and I'm going to work in an area that I think's really going to take advantage of the statistics. And I never regretted it one day. So that's photos. My family have been enormously supportive, particularly my mother. When I was a student, I didn't have to work. She said, your job is to study and do well. Phenomenal support. My husband, Alan, has always supported my career. His career was in basketball. We met through basketball. And we have continued our association with basketball through our lives. Alan got national accreditation as a referee. He initially played, he coached, he was a referee, he then coached referees. He's not doing that now, but we have maintained that affiliation. Our son ended up becoming a referee. Our daughter did score table at the Paralympics in 2000 in Sydney. So we've maintained that association. It's been there all the time. And to make it interesting, I've just added a few photos here. Darcy said, add some photos. It'll be a bit more interesting. So the top left, my daughter, my mother and myself, our family, Alan, Lee, myself and Jay. Here we were at Disneyland, and Alan down there in a photo. In the centre, bottom, you have our extended family, daughter Lee, husband Craig and their son Parker, myself and Alan. Then you have Jay, his wife Tanya, and their children, Ethan and Lily. This was taken a couple of years ago. Ethan is now almost as tall as me. When I saw him yesterday, he was trying to say he was taller, but not quite. While I was working with Walt, while I was working in the department, Walt Federer and his wife Edna from Cornell University visited the University of Sydney. They wanted to come up to see Brisbane and meet some people who were biometricians at the University of Queensland. So my boss, Ivor Horton, invited them up and said to me, Kaye, would you look after them, please? I'm playing golf that weekend. Can you do something? Okay, that'll be fine. Again, an opportunistic association. We were very happy to look after them. And I said to him, I'm thinking about doing a postdoc at some stage, because if you do all your degrees at the one university, sometimes people think that you're not quite competitive. You need to maybe go overseas or go to another university to do something. So he said, yeah, you can come over and work with me. No problem. So I applied for a Fulbright postdoctoral fellowship, and I was fortunate enough to get it. And we went over as a family. Alan took leave without pay. Our kids went to school in Ithaca, where Cornell is based in upstate New York, and we had a fabulous time. While I was there, Walt said, I'm going to an Army Design of Experiments conference in Carmel in California. Why don't you come along? I'm sure you'll meet some other interesting people. I went along. I got to meet John Tukey, you know, the John Tukey. And here I was, this, you know, very junior person, having dinner with Walt Federer, John Tukey, and George Box. Wow. John later rang me when I was back in Cornell and said, would you like to work with me, Kaye? You can think about it. I don't need to think about it, John. I'd love to work with you. And I had the fortunate situation to go and visit with John every year then until he died. And we worked together. It was a fantastic opportunity. It was a meeting, unplanned. During this period, I started developing my international networks. I started working with people overseas. Peter Kroonenberg from Leiden University had visited Australia. We got to meet. I went to a seminar actually in this building. Got to meet him and thought, this work sounds really interesting for the sort of work I'm doing. His work on principal component analysis. It was great. And I started also working with Fred van Uwijk from Wageningen, and we're working with him now in some joint research grants, a joint research project that Scott Chapman is organising. But some of these connections you take with you for the rest of your life. After that postdoc, Ivor retired, and I was appointed to be the senior lecturer in biometry within the UQ Department of Agriculture. And I was promoted to reader in 94 and professor in 2000. The next slide, I wanted to show you, these were the photos, the centre one and the one on the right are with John Tukey when I met him in Carmel. And on the top left was, we had a Chevy Malibu that Alan had to put pieces in the boot and put pieces on the floor so that the kids didn't see the road. But we did lots of trips. We went to Niagara Falls, Washington, DC, New York City, Lake Placid, where they had the Olympics. We had a fabulous time. It was a great experience as a family. I didn't have a photo of Walt at that time, but in the bottom left, there's a photo there with my mother. This was taken about 15 years later when we visited him, and she had her 80th birthday. They made a cake for her. She was rapt. It was a great experience. Then I was asked by Darcy to talk about some of the things I did as an academic. Postgraduate training. I was supervisor or associate supervisor of about 30 PhDs and 4 research masters in statistics, biometry, quantitative genetics, etc. Roughly half were international, half were part-time students. Jason Bull went into industry. He was in Monsanto for many, many years. He's now the Chief Innovation Officer in East West Seed. They're ag tech specialist and global plant breeder at one of the world's leading vegetable seed companies. He's based in Thailand. Bronwyn Harch, who's in the audience, is the DVC at Griffith University. Nicole Jensen, who's also in the audience, worked at Pioneer, Monsanto in the US, came back to Australia, worked for GRDC. And Noura Ratnasiri, I thought I'd mention one of my international students. He did a he did a master's, research master's, and then worked as a postdoc for a little, worked as a research assistant for a little while, then went to the US and worked in the US Californian Department of Medicine. No, Department of Health. Sorry, it was the Department of Health. He was a health statistician there and subsequently did a part-time PhD with me and analysed data on women having children and some of the characteristics that influenced the health of their babies. I also wanted to mention that Min Zan, my most recent PhD student, who's also now working in medicine. She works for the UQ Department of Medicine Clinical Trial Centre, run by Andrew Martin, who's here as well. You don't always keep in touch with your students, but some you do, and they remain lifelong friends. During my academic career, I was fortunate enough to publish 2 books. The first one was with Jeff McLaughlin. Jeff's published quite a lot of books. And that's the one on mixture models, what my PhD was about. And the other one, I was very fortunate to write a book with John Tukey. I must admit, when I went for promotion to professor, I waited until that book came out. I think that was a very good piece of document to take to that interview. A suggestion when people are following careers. Careers aren't a race. You don't have to bounce from one thing to another or go for promotion very quickly. Sometimes it's better to make sure you cross the T's and dot the I's and cover all the bases. That doesn't always happen, but I think if you can do that, you will feel in a much more confident situation when you go for promotion or you go for another job. Darcy also asked me to give some information about publications. Half my publications would be in the agricultural literature. Some are in the statistics literature. I was fortunate to work a lot with Mark Cooper, who's an outstanding plant breeder and quantitative geneticist. He now works back in Australia, having had a career at Pioneer in the US. He's now with an ARC centre here, back in UQ. Vivi Arif had done her PhD here. She worked for me for about 12 years on the Monsanto project that we had with them. Sometimes people think it's too difficult to work with industry. My experience was that was not the case. We had a page agreement. The agreement was they owned the data. It was given to us coded. We owned the statistical analysis and the methodology, but we would give them the programs, everything else, and teach their people how to use it, and they did. And we never had a hassle. We had to reorganise our grants every year, but it worked well. We were very happy with it. And I think Monsanto were pleased with what we did. They kept giving us money. And I believe that the processes they put in place where they analysed the data from all over the world overnight and it went out. None of this business about taking weeks to analyse data. After I was promoted to professor in 2000, I was appointed head of school. And at the time it was called it was the School of Land, Crop and Food Sciences, but it was Land and Food Sciences. It was Agriculture and Food Sciences. Schools change names, restructure, faculties restructure. People think that they work for a department at a university and they determine what goes on. That's not true. You work for a university and the university is changing all the time. And I'm sure that happens in private enterprise too. The people I talked about working for Pioneer became Pioneer Bayer, then it changed names again. Monsanto was taken over by other people. That happens in industry too. Things don't stay the same. Even if you work for government or CSIRO, things change. You have to understand if you're not the boss, you don't work for yourself, don't expect that you can say what happens. You work for an entity and you either accept change or you go and do something else. I was very proud to be appointed head because I was the first person appointed head of that school who wasn't an agricultural scientist by training. Here I was trained as a statistician. I did nothing but mathematics from second year on. I didn't study any biology or any agriculture, but I learnt a lot of it in those next 20 odd years, 25 years when I was working there. So I was very pleased with that. As I said, school changed, but I did that for 10 years. And in fact, that is still officially my home, that school. I have the same office that I had when I moved out of the head of schools office. I had joined the academic board because I was head of school. All heads of schools are on academic board. And I ended up being president of academic board from 2012 to 2014. That is a superb role. You learn all about the university because academic board actually controls the teaching, the research, staff, the promotions, all of those things. The reviews of the schools, it conducts those. You get an amazing experience working in that role. There are only 2 appointments to Senate. One is the VC, the other one is the President of Academic Board. So therefore, you're on the University Senate. As a statistician, I was on the Finance Committee. You always tend to get on Finances Committee if you know something about numbers. So it was a great experience. When that finished, I was appointed the interim director, half-time, for the Centre for Applications in Natural Resource Management. This was looking after fisheries. And Beth Woods, who'd been a student in agriculture, was then the Director General of the Department of Primary Industries. And we worked with her, and the statisticians who worked in that unit recommended that a fisheries close. That's pretty important to people in that industry. Beth said, "Are you confident, Kaye, that this is right?" Yes. The statistician has done the right thing. This is correct. The fishery was closed and the department got no slack about it, no flack about it. Great experience. Data and appropriate analysis is so important. And if it's sold well, people will accept bad news. And bad news was this fishery is going to close for at least a year or two. After that, I was asked by the VC to be head of the School of Biomedical Sciences. This was not something that the school wanted at all, as you can imagine. Schools usually appoint their heads. This was a case where the Vice-Chancellor said, we need to have change. I want you to go in, Kaye. And that was not an easy job because you were making decisions and saying, this is what the Vice-Chancellor wants, this is what we're going to do. And that doesn't necessarily go well with senior members of academic staff. That was not an easy job, but I think we made great progress. And I'm actually quite honoured that Jeff McColl, who was the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, he came in while I was in that role, is actually a member of the audience today. I think he's still a member. I can't see the audience, but that's okay. We'll look later. So thank you, Jeff. When Jeff was appointed, he said to me, you don't have the sort of background I expect for someone who's head of biomedical sciences. And the comment was, Jeff, you don't want the change that's there. You tell me, I'll leave tomorrow. I was supposed to have the job for 4 months. I had it for 4 years. It was really good though. I made good friends there and I believe we made progress. And Jeff was telling me, he's left here now, he's retired to Melbourne. He was telling me that some of the changes that were made when I was head and appointment of new, in particular young women, actually made a difference. So I was quite pleased with that. So that's my academic career. Leadership in professional and academic societies. I tended to be a sort of person who said, if you're not prepared to do it yourself, you can't expect other people to do it. So I've been a long-term member of the Stats Society of Australia and the International Biometric Society. They are my two professional society homes. And I was president of the Australasian region of the International Biometric Society in 97, 98. I ran the International Biometric Conference in 2004 in Cairns. We ran it with the Stats Society of Australia and we ran it 50-50. Anyone from either society could go to any of the talks. It was held in Cairns because if you come to an international conference from overseas, you can visit one place. Why have them visit Brisbane? Why not have them visit some place like Cairns where they'll see something different about Australia? And we had great numbers of attendees, but some people said, why aren't you running it in the capital city? You can go to Cairns or somewhere, but you can only go if you've got money. If you're a young statistician, you're not going to be able to afford to go around. So if you run the conference there and they get funding to go, they can go there. So it was quite a change for it to be held in a non-capital city. But Australia's so big, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Then I was president of the Stats Society. I was president of the International Society. I met some fantastic people, Nick Fisher, Sue Wilson, Helen McGilvray, Ron Sandlin, Mario Dentuono from Western Australia. Anyone who's a statistician probably of the older age will probably know Mario from Western Australia. These were people, many of them were in the Biometric Society and in the Stats Society. And Roger and Andrew Mead were an outstanding set of biometricians. Roger, unfortunately, has died now, but Andrew is the chief statistician at Rothamsted Research Station, and they have got the oldest continuing agricultural experiments in the world. They've still got the same fields going for more than 100 years. I became Vice President of the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. Alan Finkel was president at the time, and we went to the conference for the Academies of Technological Sciences and Engineering from around the world. And we were in Beijing, and Alan had to come back. He was called back to Canberra because he was being interviewed for the chief scientist role. You may remember that he was the chief scientist of Australia. So I filled in for him at the reception for Xi Jinping that was hosted by him. So that actually is a real photo. It's not generated by AI. I met some fantastic people in that society. Margaret Hartley, I knew Max Liu from here, John Simmons from engineering. It's a society that has engineers, medical people, and agricultural scientists. Fantastic. I've got some great experiences. On boards, I happen to be an elected member of Senate for 2 terms before I was a head of school, 1996 to 2001. And if you're on Senate, you get allocated a college and you are on their board. I was allocated Union College to be their representative, and I ended up being chair at a later period, 2001 to 6. I got involved in the Crawford Fund, as it used to be called. It's now called Crawford Fund for Food Security, which is about international agricultural development, trying to make sure our neighbours can feed themselves. If they can feed themselves, they're less likely to want to invade you or take you over. There's a lot of people close by. We're not a very highly populated country. It's much better to have our neighbours well fed. If we help them, maybe they're going to be more likely to be friendly to us than if they're not. We've added the food security recently to the name because people say, what's the Crawford Fund? It doesn't mean anything. Now it's called the Crawford Fund for Food Security. I actually joined that back in 2010 when Sally Ann Atkinson, who used to be a mayor of Brisbane, people who've been around a long time will know, she used to chair it. I've been involved in international agricultural development for many years through the Agriculture Department, working with the international research centres. In fact, I was vice chair of the board of trustees of the International Rice Research Institute. I had joined that in 2013. In fact, in joining that, I was recommended by Beth Woods. Sometimes things come your way by recommendations if you do a good job. That's why no matter what you do, you put your soul and your effort into it and do a good job. My husband's looking at his watch telling me I better hurry up. And I did some things locally. I chaired the Ipswich Health Foundation for a year or two. Statisticians are considered to be numerate people. They understand that you want evidence to make decisions. And I think collaboration with academia, professional societies, academies and boards can be a very interesting way to go, and I've enjoyed it. In terms of fellowships, I have a fellowship with several societies, the Institute of Statisticians, the Australian Institute of Ag Science and Technology, Australian Institute of Company Directors, the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, and the Queensland Academy of Arts and Sciences. Very often you are put forward by people for that, and but you meet some just incredible people. opportunities to do that Australian Institute of Company Directors course. That was offered to every head of school at UQ. I think there were 2 heads of schools who took it up. It surprises me that people don't take advantage sometimes of what's offered. It's work, but it's good learning work. I've been fortunate enough to be offered some awards. The Australian Medal for Agricultural Science from AIAST was in 1988. As a non-agricultural scientist by training, I was very proud to receive that. And the 2 societies that I've worked in all my life, and outstanding, I can't spell, Outstanding Service Award and Life Member of the Stat Society of Australia, and the Alf Cornish Award for the Australasian region, and a Life Member of the IBS. And finally, I was given an AM, which was, again, someone puts you up, you don't do it yourself. Someone puts you forward for that, and that was my family at that time. There's other people with that AM in the Stat Society. In fact, Helen McGilvray, who spoke last, Ron Sandlin, Neil Menzies at Griffith University, who used to be head of agriculture here at UQ, Gabriel Pursley, who was the first scientist employed by ACR, the Australian Commission for International Agricultural Research, based in Canberra, and does a lot of work in Africa. It's been, you just meet some incredibly interesting people. Currently, I do some odd things. I took when the universities were trying to get rid of older people after COVID, they offered you to encourage you to leave. UQ wanted to get rid of quite a lot of people. They got rid of 450. Unfortunately, it was only 150 academics, and it was 300 professional staff. It made a massive difference to the professional staff support to academics when you lose that number. And they felt that people, particularly those who are older, might volunteer their services anyway. So it just means they do it without paying you. I assist with biometrics, data analytics and management for a very large national research project, analytics for the Australian grains industry, run at UQ by Scott Chapman. I also assist with some international research projects in Africa, jointly run with Gabriel Pursley. I'm a non-executive director on a couple of boards. I'm a committee member of a couple of Nick Fisher's SSA committees. And maybe this might inspire some late career professionals that impact and passion can thrive beyond your formal employment. And my final comments are, anyone training in statistics should see that it is the basis for a career in almost any field or endeavour that they are interested in, or one that they might not know they're interested in at the time, until perhaps it comes around. Your career should be a source of pleasure and satisfaction. If you're not enjoying it, maybe you should think about another job. Enjoy.
Okay. Thank you, Kaye. So it's Q&A time. I can ask the first question, our audience can ask. So we go from me, in person, online. Okay, so my first question, Kaye, my first question is about mentoring. So I approached you 8 years ago. The dean suggested go and meet Kaye Basford. I don't know why. And I didn't know why on that time. And I came to see you. And you were head of school on that time. And you straightforward, yes, come, I can talk to you. And I do know stories like someone living near your house that wanted their kid to study maths. Or do they need to study maths or not to study maths? you still advise them. My question is, on what basis you select these people? Do you have enough time? What goes in your mind if someone approaching, you allocate the time to help this person or talk with them?
I think it's very important if someone asks your advice, particularly about something in mathematics or careers or agriculture or whatever, that if you've had a happy and successful career yourself, that you answer their questions. You have to be very careful about giving advice, and you need to say to that person, what suits me may not suit you. And therefore, I can tell you what I found to be useful, or what some of the things that I thought were helpful to me, but that doesn't mean that you should do it. You have to think, are you comfortable with that? Thank you. Are you comfortable with that sort of thing? I know once or twice I've been asked by someone and I said, oh, I've seen your CV and I'm happy to put your name forward for this. Oh, no, I don't want you to do that. That's fine. But I sometimes think that the personal help with putting someone forward can be useful. But this person didn't want that. And that's perfectly fine for that person. One of the things that does worry me about the mentor programs that are happening now in a lot of places is people get allocated. You know, you want to have a mentor, here's this person. You want to have a mentee, here's this person. You may not suit each other. And you've got to be prepared to say, look, I don't think we match very well. These are some of the things that I think are useful, but you don't think they are because they wouldn't suit you. That is perfectly fine. You have to try and get help from those that suit you. And you came to see me and I was very happy to see you. And I do say to people, this is my thoughts, or these are my thoughts. Think about whether they will work for you. If you think they can, try them. If you really don't think they work, well, then just discard them. That's fine.
Any questions from audience here?
What do you think of the proliferation of data collection and citizen scientists, and every second paper you read, newspaper article you read says research shows, and last example is almost every bottle of wine in a liquor store has an award sticker on it. So what do you think of the proliferation of evidence that's out there?
Representative data or appropriate data, and what the inference from that can be applied to me, it means we need many more statisticians. But they have to be prepared to get out and get their hands dirty and learn about the area. There's very few people that can work in all areas. You learn about an area and then you learn about the limitations and the benefits and the conditions that work for that area. Not many of us can work like John Tukey did across this swathe of areas. So I'm hoping it's going to mean more statisticians will be wanted and used. But I do worry, and I was talking to someone earlier today about the proliferation of views that have no basis. And the one example I use all the time is vaccinations has made a huge impact on community health, particularly in developing countries. Yet we get people who say vaccinations, my child died from vaccination. And that can be true, and that can be really unfortunate and very sad. But the difference that it made to public health doesn't mean you throw away vaccinations. And I don't know how young people these days learn to know what data and what evidence is right versus hearsay or views. And I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you, Kaye. There's a question online.
Okay. I imagine you come across people, a lot of conflicts. My best achievement. I don't know if I have a best achievement. When I was president of the IBS, we had to change. We changed, and this decision was made before I came in as president. We changed the constitution. And that was very difficult to do, because you'd have someone online who'd then say, this is rubbish, why are you doing this? And copy it to 300 people. And you're trying to make change that had been requested before that, and you're trying to get views. You have to treat people with respect, regardless of whether they treat you with respect. And it doesn't mean that they're going to like you or they're going to like what changes you make or what changes you do, but you are working for an entity, whether it be a professional society, a board, whether it be a school, at a university or whatever. You do the best you can with what you are asked to do at the time. If you feel that what you're being asked to do is not acceptable, then and you don't believe in it, then my advice is look for another job. Because you shouldn't be doing something that you don't believe is going to have positive outcomes. Nothing will have all positive outcomes, but more positive outcomes than negative outcomes. I think I did a reasonable job in biomedical sciences, but not everyone was happy. I had professors yelling at me. And you just have to say, well, thank you for your advice, but that's not what we're going to do. Don't argue. I don't believe I've got into an argument with anyone, but you have to be able to hold your line if you really believe that's what you're doing and what you're doing is right. I can't answer that any better than that, Emmy.
So that's a nice answer, Kaye, but because you talk about this argument and stuff, I want to change my questions. So anything related to females or being a female put you in the back? Did you ever felt that they treated you bad because you're a female, specifically olden days before COVID?
I was an only child, so there was only a female. I didn't have any brothers. I felt that I could do things. I didn't feel that because I was a female, I wasn't going to be able to do things. Alan, my husband, would say that if someone was talking down you because you're a female, it would have just gone swish straight over my head, and I would have just continued on. I think men and women do things differently. When I was talking about applying for promotions, men very often apply for promotions very early and they give it a go. Women tend to make sure they dot the I's and cross the T's. Now, that's a generalisation, but I think women feel more hurt when they don't get things. And we all don't get things. I've applied for things, not even got an interview. And that, you know, it's a disappointment, but you move on. I guess I've been lucky enough to be able to have other opportunities in front of me, and I haven't ever felt that I couldn't do anything because I was a female. And I hope that's the attitude I have passed on to our children, and I have passed on to people that have asked me about that.
Any questions from the audience?
Thanks for sharing your insights, Kaye. 2 questions for you. If you were starting out just fresh, just got your PhD, let's say, what area of mathematics would you be pointing yourself in, like facing off for a career? And second question, would you do it at a university or would you go to industry?
I would choose the same thing I did. I would choose statistics. I wanted my maths to be useful, and I felt that statistics was a place where it was going to be useful. I didn't want to work in telecommunications or something like that. Even though I had no interest in agriculture initially, I saw that experimental design and analysis, when we were taught that by Henry Finucane, I thought, this is really interesting. It could make a difference. So I wouldn't change what I did. I actually think you can have a wider impact in the university or in a teaching role than you necessarily can in industry. It depends where you are. Like the sort of influence that Mark Cooper had, Jason Bull had, you've had, they are phenomenal. And people have made huge differences in industry, which I think I contributed to in a little way to getting the people there. Joanne de Favire, who now works for APPN, was at a workshop I was at a couple of weeks ago. And she actually said to the audience there, Kaye Basford got me into being a biometrician. I didn't even know the lady. She shared a house when she was doing her BSc honours in the maths department at UQ with 3 agricultural people who were doing 3rd year biometrics with me about analysing plant breeding experiments. And she said, thank you for putting me on this path. And I didn't even know. So it can be quite amazing how if you are positive about things, you can actually influence people you don't even know.
Thank you, Kaye. I'll go back to online. There's a question online you can read.
In the application, how important is conceptual correctness compared to practical implementation or routine practice? I would probably be most influenced by John Tukey's view on an approximate answer to the right question is more important than an exact answer to the wrong question. I was very influenced by John Tukey in terms of you need things that work. They mightn't be perfect, and you don't want to do things that are wrong, but you're not always going to satisfy the conditions perfectly. If it's close enough, I think, and you tell the people that and they understand that that's what you're doing, I think it's worthwhile. So I hope I answered Saha's question.
Thank you. Question from the audience here.
Hi, Kaye. It's Bronwyn Harch for those there in the audience. So many people there that I haven't seen for so long. So thanks for bringing us together, Kaye. I want to answer the question that someone asked you, which was, what was your greatest achievement? It's all the people you've supervised, mentored and sponsored. So thank you. Thank you so much. But I've got a real question now. What is one leadership habit you developed that turned out to matter more than your technical excellence?
I'm a very conscientious person. So I go to the trouble of, if I'm doing something, doing it as well as I can. And being prepared. I think that's important. And perhaps being honest. I will not say to one person something because that's what they want to hear. I give them my view, and that's my view I will tell everyone. And people understand if this is what I say, then they know that's what I say. It's not going to be changed when I talk to someone else. And to me, that's very important.
Thank you, Kaye. Now, a question from me. Do you have any advice for people in their latest stages, like Adrian? So no, not really, Adrian. Someone want to retire. So when I retire, what should I do? Should I retire? Should I retire 50% and then keep, or suddenly take a package, go away, and then still not really retire? I understand you're still traveling different states and so many things you're doing. Coming on campus 2 days, and whenever, probably once a year I meet you, when I asked to meet you, okay, come, there was a lunch. So later stage, what is your advice? Get away from statistics, go and do gardening, or what is your advice?
It depends on the person. I mean, we were very fortunate as a family to do a lot of travel, and we travelled as a family and have been to many places. We have continued doing travel since my husband retired and I retired, although my family say that I haven't retired. I'm still in transition to retirement, and my husband's laughing at that. But I enjoy what I do. I probably work a bit too hard, I will admit that. But, and I'm slowing down. I'm not doing quite as much. The work so I think it's got to agree with what you feel is what you want to do. If you haven't travelled, I mean, Australian travelling around Australia is just phenomenal. We have such spectacular countryside. We've camped. We went camping with those people who provided me with my PhD data up to Cape York. They were all in camper vans. We were in a tent. We had a tent for Alan, myself, and a tent for Lee and Jay. We decided after that trip, we're getting a camper van. We have had camper vans and caravans for 30 years. It's been great to see a country, and we've had the opportunity to see places overseas. I think you learn a lot from seeing and mixing with other people and having that ability to travel. If you haven't travelled, someone might like to retire and travel. It suited me and I was fortunate enough to be made an Emeritus Professor, so I can come into work. And the universities, they don't pay you, so you do what you like. You don't have to do things. It's very generous. So I can't tell people what to do. It's got to be their choice on what they feel comfortable with. But if they feel comfortable with continuing to have an association with people they've worked with and they can help in one way or another, then I think that gives a good transition into the process, and other people will benefit from your experience.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
It's been amazing. Thanks for the inspiring talk. So I'll ask a question as a young statistician who's like just finished their PhD. So you mentioned that it might not look good on your CV when you work at the same place that you studied for so long. But if you're given the choice to go out of your comfort zone and like to work in a new place that gives you many opportunities, and to be in the same place, being comfortable, but gives you a lot of opportunities to collaborate internationally or locally, or giving you that opportunity, what would you choose? What advice do you have to give? Thank you.
I chose to stay in the same place because of my family. My mother lived with us for the last 10 years of her life, and our children were very fortunate to have her look after them when I went back to work. So we became a family of 5. And I chose to stay in the same place. But my girlfriend, Adrian Kirby, she went straight to Sydney. A lady I went to school with, Betty Johnson, she went straight to Canberra. I got married and stayed in Brisbane. It just depends. There's not a one answer fits all. It depends on the opportunities you have, your personal circumstances, and where you want to go. There's no right answer. You do what feels best, but I think it helps to think about keeping options open and taking advantage of opportunities that might come your way. And if you have the opportunity to learn something new, like going to that AICD course was great. I don't know why all the other heads of schools didn't go. It was an excellent opportunity. Someone says, why don't you organise this conference? Why not? It's a bit more work, but I met so many great people and made friends with lots of people. I've had a fantastic career. I'm probably a bit of a workaholic, but on the other hand, I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's got to suit you. Nobody else, you. And you make the choice under those circumstances.
So question online, this one. Sorry, hang on, this one.
Okay.
Two questions.
Okay, 2 questions. Someone wants to know, you can read this, about building successful multidisciplinary collaborations between statistics and applied fields. You start talking to people in those applied fields. In many cases, they'll be very happy to talk to you. How do you develop the communication skills needed to work? If you're shy and reserved, you need to make yourself talk to them. People want you to talk to them. I think young people these days find it harder because they're not out talking to as many people face to face. I prefer talking to people face to face or talking to people on the phone rather than just talking to people on a computer. I think that academics can't help their students as much as they used to be able to. They only see them online. People like Nicole in the audience, I used to talk to you when you were at the tutorials. We'd have a discussion. That's how I got to meet so many of the people who ended up working in these fields. Beth Woods, you talk to them and you have side conversations. I probably tended to talk to the ones who were really good at the course and asked me questions. I'm not saying I talk to everybody, but I certainly talk to some. If you're coming from outside and you need to go and talk to these people, you have to make the effort to talk to them. I never felt that I was going to be looked down on or it wasn't the thing to do. If people didn't like it, well, they didn't talk back to me and that's fine. I talked to someone else. I think you need to develop those communication skills by talking to people. Talk to your friends. Talk to people you don't know. You meet them in a lift. Say hello. You meet them in your travels. When you're travelling around Australia, particularly when you're camping, you meet people all the time because you're not in an isolated room. You actually get out and meet people. And I think that helps your communication skills. That's probably not a very good answer, but I think, and go and meet people in the areas you'd like to work in. Make an effort. Sometimes, you know, Darcy said he wanted to come and see me, and when I talked to him, I said yes. I didn't know him.
It's 8 years ago.
You see what I mean? You have to make the effort perhaps to go and talk to people.
So my time to ask question. The question is, do you think being a statistician that help you to being a leader and on all these societies and boards? What are the advantages compared to the others who are not statistician?
I think understanding data meant that, and understanding you need evidence and you need samples that are representative and all those sort of mundane but things you learn as a statistician really help you in these sort of those sort of roles. You are less likely, and you question things, and I think you have to be able to question. That's how you find out whether that's actually the right evidence or there's things you don't know. So questioning to me is a very important part, and that's what you learn as a statistician. You question. If you're in the unfortunate situation that someone did something before they come to you, you question, how did you get this? What did you do? What's your sample? What's the representative? Who are you trying to make inference to? And I think these are questions when you're on boards or committees or whatever, those skills that you learn as a statistician are very helpful.
Thank you, Kay. Helen is talking to you. Leading statistical consultant.
Ah, yes, listening and learning. You have to listen and learn from what people are saying. There's no question, Helen. You're completely correct. And I'm glad that you said that. You have to be a good listener. You have to hear what the people are telling you. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help them in any way. So you have to do that to be an effective teacher. Helen is superb in terms of that area. She's the one that's got awards in the teaching. There's no question about it.
Any questions from the audience here in person?
Thanks, Darcy. Thanks, Kaye. Great talk. You've had wonderful achievements professionally. You've also talked quite a bit about your family and your connection and the times you've spent with your family. You used the word workaholic at one point. I wonder, on reflection, what sort of advice would you give to the next generation of statisticians to have a successful career whilst maintaining a work-life balance?
Got it, Alex. No question. We always had holidays. We tended to, if possible, if I was going to a conference somewhere, we tended to try and go as a family. Cost money, but we went as a family. And then they get to get some experience and some benefit from it. I certainly didn't work. I don't believe I worked as hard when my children were younger, but I know I said to both my children, you had the advantage of your grandmother gave up her job to mind you. I'm not going to give up my job to mind your children. So I didn't give them that advantage. But I think you've also got to be a happy person. And if I was sitting at home all day and perhaps not being challenged by what I love doing, I probably wouldn't be as a happy person, and people around me wouldn't be as happy either. So I think you've got to have a balance there. But particularly when your children are young, you do have to allocate the time. And I didn't tend to work at home anywhere near as much as I do now. Alan is very, very generous to me. When he was doing his refereeing, we also supported that. So as I said, we've had basketball because basketball was Alan's career. And we tried to do that, but I probably got the most advantage. I think there's no question. But you know, it's a hard thing to do. You've got to balance it, and different people balance it in different ways. The way I did it is not necessarily the way someone else is going to do it that's going to satisfy them. But I'm pleased to say my husband and I have been married for more than 50 years, and so we seem to have made it work.
Any questions online? Do you want to unmute and talk, ask questions? Anyone here in person want to ask questions?
Thanks, Kay. Fabulous talk. So my question probably will be a general one. So I'm just interested in your view of the, as a statistician not working in the stats department, and what's your view of the recent kind of like general evolution of the stats as a discipline, like in terms of the AI and data science and mathematics going on?
I can't really answer in terms of exactly what's happening in the stats departments because I'm not as close to that anymore.
Sorry. I'm just interested in the kind of like view of the discipline. Yeah, stats as a discipline, not necessarily any physical department.
It worries me that other disciplines are not maintaining the importance of statistics within those disciplines. And I'll give agriculture as an example. We had 3 courses: Introduction, Experimental Design and Analysis, and Advanced Work. We now have 1 course. I cannot see how the agricultural scientists are going to get adequate statistical training when that's happening. And I think that's happening across the board. I don't think agriculture is just the one that's doing that. I worry about AI because I worry about how my grandchildren are going to know that what they read is fact. Reporters used to have to check facts. Nobody seems to check facts anymore. Now, maybe that's because I'm getting old, and people say when you get old, you think that what you experienced was better. But I worry about the statistical training in other disciplines now, because I don't think the people in those disciplines are getting adequate training to have the really good collaboration between the statisticians and the professionals in that discipline. I don't know how to fix it, and I must admit it's not something I'm going to try to fix, probably. I think I'll have to leave that to the teachers and who are involved in those. I just hope that they take that fight on, because I think it is going to be a fight. I think that the other discipline programs are not getting as much of the basics as they need to take advantage of. It seems to be all getting shorter and a little bit less depth in what they do. I can see a few people nodding, but And that worries me. But I'll have to leave other people to fix that. Sorry.
I have a related
One skills.
I have a related question. How did you cope with these new AI and the teaching now become virtual reality and stuff? So how do you educate yourself, and how do you see your grandchildren learning maths and so on?
Actually, my older grandchildren are maths. But I think all you can try and tell them is to try and check things. I have a daughter and a daughter-in-law who are both teachers who actually despair of the situation in schools at the moment when there's lots of issues with discipline and problems, and the children are perfect and they wouldn't possibly do anything wrong. And it's very much me, my family's right, and no, they couldn't do anything wrong. And I don't think that the training is as good, and I don't think the teachers are happy. They're not happy. They say their colleagues aren't happy. I don't know. I don't know the answers to those things. I think all we can do is try to influence our connections, that data is so important, and understanding what's fact and what's not, and what's got evidence behind it. And that's really where the statisticians come into play.
That's the question online.
My father used to say, do what you do well. If you're going to do something, you put the effort into it to do it well. And that's probably been a guiding view. And just get in there and do it. Do the work that's needed, and do it to the best of your ability.
Any final questions online or in person? No.
Communication is important. I noticed there's a last question there. I think communication is absolutely critical. You have to understand what's going on, and you also have to be careful, and this is brought home to me when I'm trying to tutor my grandson, is there's not necessarily one way to talk about something. Sometimes you've got to talk about it in different ways, because the way you're thinking is not necessarily the way the other person is thinking. And there may be difficulties in getting the message across if you're not communicating well. And you've got to be careful, and I have to be careful that I don't use technical language, that I speak in terms of what their problem is, not my background. So that's quite a useful point that's been made there.
I don't really have a question, but it's to add to what Darcy was suggesting about what do you do when you retire? I think to retire is to walk away. I don't think that you can really walk away when you're doing what you're doing. If you did, then all your experience wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be able to teach other people. And I know there's a lot of people here fairly close to retiring or wanting to retire or whatever. If they walk away and they've been working in statistics or whatever for the last 30 years, then there's 30 years of building a lifetime walking out the door. Who's going to teach the next generation? You don't just walk away from it you may stop doing what you're doing, as in 5 days a week, but your action of doing 2 days a week makes a big difference to people that have just done their PhD. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So that's time, and the society prepared a gift for you.
Incredible.